Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free, Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
Welcome to Stress-Free Living. This is Ray Samich, and I am delighted to have you join us here today for our program. We want to welcome you no matter how you are listening or watching us, whether it's on a replay on our Stress-Free Living radio YouTube channel. And if you haven't checked that out yet, if you're listening to us live, please do check it out, because we have over 100 shows there on there in their entirety from past over the last year or two. Also on there, you will find that we interact with our Zoom guests, and we have many of them today that are with us, talking to us and exchanging comments before, during, and after the show. We'd love to have you be part of it in that way as well. I'd like to introduce everybody to my radio colleague, co-host, and my longtime dear friend, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. And a little bit, though, I don't know what the right word is, a little bit depressed, maybe a little discouraged by the topic that we're going to share today. And it started because I happened to see a video that was sent to me. And the video put some stark realities with some, deep tones into this video. And I watched a lot of little video clips over my lifetime. It's part of what I do with our motivational programming, our inspirational training that we do. And this one, though, said that in 10 years after you die, even your most loved ones will probably not think of you. In 100 years after you die, there will not be anybody on earth that knew you. So you will be forgotten in the terms of the world. And I guess it wasn't really news to me, because that's just the way it is, but it was a stark reality. It was just like, wow, that really is true. Even a baby that was around when I was alive in 100 years probably won't be alive anymore. So like, my footprint on earth will be pretty much gone. All my loves and all those that love me will be pretty much gone. And then within 10 years or less, they won't even think of me. And then you put that in combination with the fact that it's such a challenging world. Every day we just seem to be taking, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or it's some days 1 step forward and 2 steps back, because of the challenges of life, the disappointments, whether they're economic or whether they're relationships or whatever it is. It just seems like life can be such a challenge. So you put all that together and it's like, gee, why am I even trying? Why don't I just give up? Why don't I just coast for the rest of my life? Because I should just try to be happy and get through it. I shouldn't worry about anything else. Let me just kind of coast through my life and take it to the end. I know that's a depressing commentary to open the show, but that's what motivated me to say, let's talk about it. Why don't we just give up? Why do we bother putting ourselves through all of the stress and aggravation if it's just this short window of time anyway? What are your overall thoughts on that?
But that's the truth. That's the reality, right?
It is.
Which we have been ignoring. So you can construct a meaningful life based on reality, or you can construct an artificial life based on what you want to believe. What is, I'm going to be there forever. I'm going to collect all these things. So regardless of whether you are a millionaire or trillionaire or richest person on earth, you cannot really take anything with you and you will be forgotten. So there are so many, if we had a dictator like Hitler and who burned all our history books or all our books, so suddenly we will have no reference left of all the people who have made tremendous contribution to this earth. So basically, this forces us to think, what are we doing here? What is our life? So this thought process, what kind of answers does it give in your mind, Ray, when you bring this reality into your psyche?
Well, I'm always an optimistic person. I always try to, it's funny. I learned something a while ago. They says, is your glass half full or half empty? And somebody told me this, and I love it. It says, no, my glass is always full. Now, even if it's only half full of a liquid, it's the other half is air, and I need air to survive. So my glass is always full. All right.
Mm.
And I think that's the way I try to live my life. Like my glass is always full. So when I was momentarily discouraged and depressed by that video, I immediately started thinking of the other side of it. I immediately started thinking of, well, that's why it is so important that I take these limited years and do something meaningful, because I was put on earth for a reason. So I have to fulfill my purpose. So that's what I started going to. But inevitably in this brain, though, it does want to come back to say, but why? Why suffer? Why stress? Why overcome the pains? It's just so much easier just to coast through. So I'm kind of, I'm fighting it a little bit. I've got a little battle ever since I saw that.
The fact is that all our education, knowledge, training, experience, intelligence, title, trophies, awards, and wealth, without comprehending the truth, will only remain highly decorated and glorified ignorance. That is more depressing, right? Because
yeah, everything we strive for, all the good things that we're striving for, you're saying just makes me more ignorant, right? Okay.
Yeah. The more,
all right, let's talk about something else.
more you learn, more knowledge you have, more education you have, the one thing we discover that how little we know. There was a major discovery and they were interviewing one of the inventors. I don't remember the name, and New York Times was interviewing him, and he said that now how close are we to finding the deciphering the secret of this living or this earth or everything. So this gentleman who is a Nobel Prize winner, he said, the one thing more we discover, the only thing we understand is there are certainly millions more things we don't have answers for. Every discovery basically raises more million questions. So we should give up the knowledge, we should give up education, we should give up training, we should give up all these things. So the question really is there is another side of human psyche. So this word happiness, and there is, I use a word joy and happiness. So suddenly happiness, the instant happiness is experienced by our five senses. What tastes good, what feels good, somebody praises you, somebody gives you ice cream, and those things gives you instant happiness. But those things, like if you are completely starving and somebody gave you a delicious meal and you'll be happy. Now, if they said you can eat all you want, so suddenly you kept on eating and eating, and pretty soon you'll be sick. So the same thing which gave you happiness gives you unhappiness. So there is another thing called joy. Joy is experienced by when you are in a crowd and suddenly this guy who is you are in front of a guy who is in front of you is older person, and suddenly he lost his balance, and your hand automatically extend out to grab him. You saved him from falling, and you don't even know this gentleman, and you move on, and suddenly that feeling of that, although nobody really going to give you award or trophy, but that feeling of inner joy which you felt by helping somebody, by making a difference without getting in trophy and medal and recognition, is basically makes you feel fulfilled, makes you feel happy. So these things we notice, although we don't use them in constructing our life or guiding our life or understanding what they mean or any of those things. We basically are guided by this artificiality given to us in the human body mode, which is basically filled with insecurity, fear, greed, ego. So all our decisions are based on these factors. So the quick happiness which we create are basically addressing insecurity, fear, greed, and ego. They are not addressing the joy, the inner joy, which is experienced by not the five senses, but your soul, with you. So first of all, in our education, initially, when we are 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year, 6-year old, they say that our basic character is formulated at that age. In that formulation, basically they are formulated by our five senses. So some are more insecure, some are more egotistic, some are more greedy, some are more insecure, and that's how we develop that personality. And all our education, all our tools we collect in this world are under the guidance of that character, which we picked up at 6-year-old person. So we are not ever given the understanding of who we are, who we really are, and which does not give us the chance of developing our core character, which is free of fear, insecurity, greed, and ego. Right?
All right. So I'm trying to put all that in perspective to what the question was at the beginning of the show. When I say, do we just give up? Is it just not worth it? The fact that we're not going to be remembered shortly after we're gone, and the fact that every day is so challenging. If it's not worth it because I'm just trying to find happiness, which most of us are, and most of us enjoy those moments of happiness, but you're right, they don't last. They're fleeting moments. And by fleeting, I mean it might be a couple hours or it might be a couple of minutes. But for the most part, whatever it is that made us happy is over. And you're also right that many times after that happiness ends, it brings sadness. You're happy because the whole family is together. Let's say you're an older person who lives alone, and now you're surrounded by family and friends. But when they leave, just as happy as you were to have them all there, you now are unhappy that you're alone again. So, there's a lot of examples that you can give about happiness that turns into unhappiness, just as a part of life. So to go through happiness for a moment, it's almost, sometimes you want to say, I would give up that moment of happiness because I don't want to experience the unhappiness that comes at the end. And sometimes you say, no, it was worth it. But other times you say it really wasn't worth it. If you just go through those as part of the challenges that we're encountering and the day-to-day experiences, I think that kind of goes on the side of my argument that says, why not just give up? Because, every happiness leads to an unhappiness eventually, and so it's not worth it. But when you bring in something like joy, to me, that changes the discussion. The whole paradigm shifts on that, because the euphoria of a joyful moment is life-changing. It's always worth it. When you experience the joy, it's like, okay, this made everything else okay. This made all of the challenges and stresses and worries and pain. To obtain that moment of joy is monumental in my life. Is that part of the answer? Is part of the answer of why we don't want to give up, because we can have those moments of joy and we just need to try to figure out how to have more of them?
There are other facts which we should put into this calculation. See, the only moment we have where we can do something is the present moment. So we can remember old memories. This is when we get together, we talk about old things and we have beer and this, that, but you never get those things back. So the only thing is the present moment. And in that present moment, if you understand the purpose of life is not to feed your ego or insecurity or greed, because they are never satisfied. If you are a millionaire, you want to become billionaire, and so on. So it's never satisfied. You can never have enough. You can never. So when you understand that, and in the present moment, if you focus towards either having momentary pleasures or focus towards creating the moment of joy. So it depends on where you use your present moment. So now, when we talk about adding the highest value. This is our purpose. We think this is what we want to do. If on the present moment, if you focus on whatever the circumstances you are facing, whether you are facing a difficulty or a challenge, and if your mind is directed, connected to creating a joy by adding the highest value, and you are on the right path. So purpose of life becomes on a present moment, adding the highest value. And to add the highest value, you continuously enhance your capability to add the highest value. So that puts you in the student mode. It puts you in constant learning, constant knowing, so that not that you are going to boast about, I have a PhD or I have this degree, I know this much, but only to add the highest value. So in other words, basically you're always remaining in the present and constantly focusing on adding the highest value and constantly learning more to add the highest value becomes the purpose of your life. Right?
We're going to take a break, Ratanjit. You gave one answer, which is great in there, but you also said something else that made me think, while you were saying one good thing, that there also is another solution in the words that you gave, another solution to this dilemma that I am kind of fighting in my brain about, is it worth it? Should we just give up? So I'm going to hold that thought until the other side of this break. We are so grateful that you are all with us here today. We're going to have a chance to interact for a couple of moments with our Zoom guests, and we invite you to be part of that group. But for the rest of you, we're going to take a break just for a couple of short messages, and we're back on Stress-Free Living in just a moment. Stay with us. All right, everybody, you've got 90 seconds. If anybody would like to ask a quick question or a quick comment that we can work into the show, we'd love to hear from you.
So Ray, Steve Marsh speaking.
Yes.
First of all, it was brilliant what Ratanjit said. I just had the opportunity, a good friend of mine died. He passed away from cancer. He had every award. He financially was unbelievably wealthy. And his son showed me their basement where they were breaking things up. And all he had on the floor was about 40 awards that he got from different organizations. And he goes, nobody wants it. What do I do with this? It's nothing. And all his son said is, it's how he affected me as a person, how he brought me up. So it speaks exactly to what Dr. Sandhi said. It's really about helping others. And when you think of the person, all you thought about is what he did. It wasn't about his awards. It wasn't about his money. It wasn't about his house. It was how he contributed to his son in this community.
Very good. Thank you. Anybody else have a thought or a question?
Throughout history, there are always these two strains of thinking. One is giving up work, and the other is finding yourself through work. And the idea of giving up work is it never wins, because living also is work, breathing is work, surviving is work. So it's not like you're ever giving up work. So giving up is never really a practical option. And as Vaisab said, it's staying in the eternal present without the regrets of the past or anxiety about the future. That
We are back on Stress Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us today. Ratanjit and yours truly, Ray Samich. Again, interacting with our Zoom guests. Sorry for cutting you off there during that period of time, but we get a lot of thoughts, a lot of different ideas that came through, which will work into the show. Ratanjit, the moment before we went to break, you had talked about living in the moment, and that was reiterated again in our conversations here with our callers. But there's also another benefit to that besides the focus on adding the highest value. And maybe you were saying this subliminally, and to me, it wasn't caught until I thought of it. Until I thought of it. Maybe I didn't think of it because you planted the seed. But it came to me that if I'm focusing 100% on the moment, I'm not allowing my brain to worry about the future. And it's the future that is the problem with this whole show concept that I presented at the beginning. If I wasn't so worried about what is going to happen 5 years from now, or 10 years after I'm gone, or 100 years after I'm gone, if I didn't think about that at all, because I am focusing on the future, then it really doesn't matter what happens 10 years after I'm gone, because I've lived in the moment to the best of my human and spiritual abilities. And what happens, let it happen, because I can't control that anyway. So that is a solution. That is a way to disregard that fear about the future, because it really is a moot point in our life. It doesn't really affect my life today if I am remembered in the future.
Well, all our worries are because of what is going to happen tomorrow, what is going to happen this evening. And we don't control that. The only thing we control, we can do something about, is the current moment. And the current moment is either making sure what is in it for me, trying to create a safeguard for my health, my family, my this and my things, or focus on whoever comes across, whether it's your family member or your own self. You're always thinking of adding value. What should I do to make a difference? What should I do which will enhance them? And once you utilize your brain in that creative mindset of thinking of adding the highest value, brain is the happiest when it creates. So you create basically hormones in your brains, which is going to make you happy. Your happiness and your joy are tied into continuously making additional, adding the highest value. And second thing, which brain becomes joy-filled when you learn something new. When you constantly learning, if you are not adding value, so there are basically two purposes, which are either learning or utilizing what you know by adding the value. When you add value, you cannot subtract value. But what we focus is always on judging people. We do not focus on adding the value. We add value conditionally. And we add value, but we add conditionally, and we add only small amount because this person only deserves this much. And as a consequence, we basically, instead of hurting them, we are hurting ourselves. We are preventing the full-blown joy to be experienced by us. That only happens when we add value unconditionally and the highest without having a ration on it, without having a control on it. We are constant. And another thing is when you added value, you are next time you are going to make your best better because you are in the mode of adding the highest value. So this path will always keep you fulfilled with joy. You are always happy. You are always smiling. You do not need somebody to give you trophy and medal. And as a consequence of this habit, no matter what you do, you would be successful. No matter where you are going to be wanted because you always add value. Imagine a person who is working in your organization who unconditionally adds value. So you have very high respect for, doesn't matter what the title of that person is, because what you know of that person today, tomorrow he's going to know better because he's on a path of continuous learning and upgrading the knowledge that person has, right?
You've just said so many things there that we can talk about. The brain is constantly going to be working. It's just a part of what it is. Just like our heart continues to beat, our brain continues to think. And so when we let it think about negatives, or when we think in a judgment way, you mentioned about adding value, and you says they only deserve so much, so I'm going to stop here because, and we do this, don't we? We evaluate as we're moments of adding value. Well, I'm doing this because this is pretty much what they've given me. Maybe it's at our job. Maybe that's how we work. Okay. I'm getting paid this much. I'm appreciated this much. So I'm going to work this hard. I'm not going to do any more than that because it's pretty even. I'm judging. Or I'm doing something nice for you because this is the level of our relationship. This is how nice you've been to me. So I'm going to be this nice to you. Maybe I'm going to go a little more. And that way I'm going to show that in my mind, I'm a little better than you, or I'm nicer than you, or I'm going to raise the level of the bar for both of us. So now you're going to be nicer to me. We're constantly using our brain to do these evaluations, right? We're not using the brain to think how I can add more value. We're using our brain, partially at least, to think about, am I getting a fair deal on this? Is this commensurate with where I'm being treated and how I deserve to be treated? And we're thinking back historically of, was this person nice to me when that happened? And so now I'm going to be that nice to them. It's crazy what our, we have a miraculous computer in this head of ours that can do all these calculations and computations instantaneously, but we're using it for the wrong things. We're using it as, to judge and to evaluate and to compare, instead of focusing entirely on the best that we can do and the making our best better compared to the last time we did this. That in itself is, again, I think part of the solution to my dilemma, because instead of doing the right thing with the brain and using it in the right way to figure out how to make my best better and add more value, I'm using it on the negative things. I mean, they really are negative if you think of it. If I'm suddenly in a judgmental, or constantly in a judgmental mode, if I'm constantly evaluating what I should be doing, the level of how I should be acting relative to some other judicial standards, that's counterproductive. It's negative. it actually hurts me because it brings into the equation in my brain the fact that maybe I haven't been treated as well as my ego thought I should be. Maybe I've been harmed in this process and I'm not being appreciated as much as I should be for how great I am, or whatever the things are that in my wacky brain that I'm debating about. These are all harmful, and absolutely you can see how they prevent me from feeling joy. I mean, I
Yes.
might even have a moment of happiness during this situation. Oh, I just did something nice. I did something meaningfully and maybe something smart. So I'm having a moment of happiness. But the guilt that goes with that, or the disappointment that comes along with that, immediately makes me feel bad about it. So this is an interesting concept, how you're bringing all this to be. You've got a story, and I think we have time before the break. You've got a story about the genie and the pole, and I know I'm pulling this out of the air here. Do you remember your story there to share for our listeners that
Yeah,
never heard that?
you in this brain of ours is a genie. It needs to be constantly engaged. You can engage in the negative thoughts, or engage in the positive thoughts, or engage in the creative thoughts. So the story goes like this: that there was this guy who was very devoted to this uh, temple, and he would always go to this temple, whether it is raining or thundering or whatever it is. He would take some flowers and do this. So on one of these days, the this saint appears. Say, guy, you I've seen you come here all the time. So what do you want? So he said, I don't know whether you can give it to me, but I want a genie. So when I rub him and genie appears, and I can ask him whatever I want, and he would grant me, he will build that. So he says, oh, I can give you this genie, but this genie works very fast. So if you cannot keep him busy, it can eat you up. So no, sir, don't worry about that. I have so many things which I want done. So this genie will be always busy. So the saint says, well, in case this guy, you cannot keep him busy, come to me and I'll give you basically a solution. So he takes this home and he creates a huge list of this home he wanted to build, a palace he wanted to build. This should be gold, this should be this. So it took him almost several days to describe what he wanted. He says, okay, genie, go ahead and build this. So in 5 seconds, he appears, says, sir, it is built. So what else you want me to do? So he saw this palace being whatever it took him several years to think about, and several moments to design. So suddenly it was built in a split second. So suddenly he told him something else and he did that. So he realized that this guy, I can keep him busy. So he ran to this saint and he said, ask him to build a huge pillar, several miles long, and ask him to go up and go down, go up and go down, till you ask him to do something else. So that never ends. When he comes down, he has to go up. When he goes up, he has to come down. So similarly, the task we should give this mind a genie is to add the highest value. Suddenly, you cannot add the highest value till you improve. So you are constantly engaging the mind to improve from what you have done. And it forces you to become a better student. So basically, a ordinary student always wants to be better than others. A good, true students always want to be better than themselves. A ordinary student, when they achieve something, they are very proud of their achievements. But the true student is always very grateful for their achievements, because they know for them to achieve what they, so many things have helped them. Basically, you need oxygen to breathe. You cannot manufacture oxygen. So you have to be grateful to this for divine forces to grant you this human body through which you are able to add the highest value. So you have to be very grateful. So the conventional student is part in insecurity, ego, fear, and greed. The true student is part basically in the truth, a true divine forces, and truth drives everything it does, and it is part in the divine force which is enlivening this human body, rather than this human body which is housing this force. So they are lost in I, me, and mine, whereas the true student basically becomes a selfless. So these are the conditions for a true student. So until you become true student, you cannot learn, you cannot position yourself to add the highest value. Ray.
We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back about the idea of being a student. We're going to interact with our guest here with us on Zoom. One last comment on the poll story, though, because I love that, and we can use that analogy, each of us. What that meant to me was the discipline in which we use our brain. And you can kind of think of a pole, of a pillar, as being the discipline to say, okay, this is the task, go up and down that task. The analogy for that would be the task of that pole would be to make my best better, to figure out a way continuously to add truly the highest value, better than I could have done an hour ago or yesterday. That's my discipline. If we don't have that pillar for that genie of our brain to go up and down on, if we don't have that discipline to stick to the task, that brain is going to go in any which direction and every which direction it possibly can. And most of those directions are going to be along the lines of greed and fear and ego. Most of them are going to go off in those directions, judging and evaluating and doing all kinds of things that are negative, instead of being stuck on that pole with that mission, with that defined mission. Every time I think of that story, it's just like, okay, this is what I've got to do. Don't let the brain run rampant, because it can be dangerous. It can be, especially if you got a good brain, especially if you're really a sharp person, that can really get you in trouble if you don't have a discipline. We're going to come back. This is Stress-Free Living. We only have a few minutes left, but we do need to take a break. Please stay with us. We'll be back in just a bit. All right. Thanks, everybody. Quick thoughts. Sorry for cutting you off there at the last break. Who's got a quick thought this time?
But controlling the brain, that's all the marbles, that's everything.
Yes, it is the
Yeah.
secret.
Yeah.
Anybody have a quick thought here or question you want me to ask?
I guess my quick thought is just the adding the highest value as you go through life. There's so many different stages of the highest value, if you will, from individuals, and then as you get in, you're over at the head of a company, like both of you guys have experienced, and you really feel like, wow, I'm really adding the highest value here. Then you retire, like I am, and you're still trying to add value, but it's at a way different level. I'm so happy when I get the lawn mowed and it all looks really nice. It's those kinds of things when you say, well, I guess I'm still adding the highest value, but it's at a whole different level than it was 15 years ago. I can tell you that. But anyway, I love your story, love your show here. Just adds all kinds of crazy things in my mind that I hadn't thought about, like what does happen 5 or 10 years afterwards. I can tell you that nobody from my highway department days or my managing an office with engineering company remembers Doug Chaper. I bet that name never comes up ever. So I'm well
Anybody
forgotten.
else? We're real quick. A little bit of time left. If anyone has a thought. Thanks, Doug. Okay, I guess we're on our own to finish this up. Doug gave me a thought here for our next show as far as adding it in as our lives evolve. We're back on Stress-Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Ray Samich with you and Ratanjit Sandhi asking about giving up. Should we just give up? People aren't going to remember us anyway. People in 100 years, every single person that knows us right now, even the little babies that maybe are our grandchildren as we get older in life, and great-grandchildren, if we make it to that stage, they're all going to be gone in 100 years. And so, is it really worth it? With all the challenges and frustrations and disappointments of the day-to-day basis, should we just kind of coast through and just put in our time, put in our years, and go on from there? Well, Ratanjit, I think.
Ray, actually, we have never answered your question. Should we give up? The answer is yes. We should give
Oh my
up.
gosh.
We should give up all our chase based on insecurity. We should give up all our chase based on our fear, greed, and ego. So that is what we need to give up. And once you give up that, what is left? Is left only to add the highest value, to experience the joy which comes through this. Now, there is another story. There is a real story. There's an organization called Lubrizol, and it's a very large publicly traded company, chemical company in Cleveland. So in their history, there was a janitor who basically parked in this mindset of constantly learning and constantly adding value. So eventually, that janitor became the CEO of that company because he was constantly finding solutions, constantly adding value, constantly learning. He put himself in the night school and educated himself. And so worldly application of this is also there. You will financially become successful, you will become famous, you will become all those things, but they would not mean much to you, because what means much to you is your purpose of adding the highest value and your mission of continuously educating yourself, increasing your capability to add the highest value, and without judging and remaining in the present. Ray?
Ratanjit, I have to, just because this has been a really meaningful show to me. This has taken me from a little bit of depression and discouragement to really thinking that you've laid out a map here that we can overcome this, even if we're not starting at such a discouraged start, just if we're just not sure where to go. The first thing you brought up today was joy. That's the first thing I really noted, was that we're always in pursuit of happiness. We think, and there's been, I would guess, hundreds of thousands of books written about how to be happy. I don't know how many books there have been written about how to be joyful. I'm sure a fair number, but you to me explain the difference between happiness and joy so well, that happiness appeals to our human senses. Joy is that feeling deep within, the feel that maybe it dissipates, maybe we forget about it, but we never turn it around to have an unjoyful moment. We just have a eventually that the euphoria, the joy dissipates, but it never turns into unjoy, if you will, as happiness often turns into unhappiness. So that was the first thing. Strive for the joyful moments. Do those things that don't look for a response, don't look for a return, that aren't based on conditions and judgments. They're just giving of yourself in the best way. And then you talked about living in the moment, not letting your brain go to the past or especially to the future with worries and fears, but living in that moment. And then the third part, of course, in that moment is how to add the highest value, how to make the best better, how to discipline your brain in creative ways and functional ways to look for every moment. What can I do right now? Those are the three bullets that I wrote down here. What you just said a second ago is really interesting, that doing those things might make you that janitor of Lubrizol who becomes CEO. Okay, you didn't do all of those things for that result. You were doing those to be in the moment, to leave your legacy, even if you don't care what that legacy is, but you're creating a legacy. And in that process, incredible things just could happen, that you could be recognized and you could receive those worldly awards. But I think the beauty of it is that even if you don't receive those worldly awards, even if you don't get noticed, even if you don't leave a lasting legacy in 100 years, you have done incredibly meaningful things with your life in the period of time that you're here. So that would kind of be a bonus, but that's certainly not the reason you're doing it. Does that sum up what you have shared? And did I leave anything out that was critical?
Yeah, that's basically, we are trying to be successful. We are trying to have more money. We are trying to have better title, all that. And we are doing it based in the human body mode, which is highly infected by insecurity, fear, ego, and greed. And as a constant nature of that is that constantly judging people and making our outcome of adding value less or more, or we are. So as a constant result of that is the consequence of that is never good enough. And you are always blaming your luck or circumstances or somebody else. You are thinking of competition. Your only competitor is your last best. The only competitor you have is your last added value. You have to enhance the higher value than that. So unless this mindset is created within ourselves, and that mindset must be given to a young 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, up to 6-year, and otherwise we will have a society which is all part in ego, greed, fear, and insecurity. That's all we have. Whether we have a PhD or a Nobel Prize winner or a president of our nation, and they are all part in basically these things. They're all operating in the human body mode because their character was formed when they were young and they lived through that character dictating them to make all the decisions in their life. So it is very important to change that.
Ratanjit, it is time that we have to go, but you're so right with that last point. If this conversation today has been meaningful to you, and if it has laid out some steps for you personally in your life that you think are worthwhile, then share it with a youngster in your life, your child, your grandchild, anybody that you can that can pass this information on. Because you're right, it's something to receive this in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, but it would really be monumentally effective if we could start this with our children to really have them enjoy their life, living it to the fullest. Ratanjit, thank you for starting this conversation and sharing all these wonderful thoughts with all of us today and sharing your love with us. Thank you. Thanks to everybody else for being part of our program, all of our great Zoom guests, and all of you out there listening and being a part of the show. We really do appreciate you and hope that we've added value to your life. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. We have with us Professor Perm Srikantia.
We have such wonderful people out there today. We are so grateful for all of you. Professor Perm, if you're with us, share a thought.
Oh, I thought it was an incredibly powerful, stimulating and uplifting conversation. I got tremendous value from it, so I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you not aware, a professor has co-hosted on several occasions when I haven't been available and adds wonderful insight to the show. We invite you, encourage you to be with us and share more of your wisdom with us. We love having you.
Thank you so much.
Who else has a thought? Anybody who hasn't perhaps spoken yet? We'd love to hear from you too, if you're there.
Good morning, Ms. Kim. I appreciate the conversation as well. It's always great to be with you. What I think about is purpose and attachment. And I find that when I'm attached, especially with my children, and I believe I'm adding the highest value, it's the attachment messes it up because I want a specific outcome and I'm not happy if I'm not getting that from them. So just letting all of it go and really just being, how do you balance being of service and being a responsible parent? Because it occurs to me like I need to be intentional when I'm nurturing and training young people, especially like teenagers and young adults when they're making choices that may seem risky. So to let it go and just add the highest value when I want to kill them, it's not easy for me.
This concept of children, their mind, they have my blood, and they're there's a story of an old king. This king was very loved by its public and very loved king. But in the old time, this is a normal thing to have many queens. So this guy had 200 queens, harem of 200 queens, and he had sons with them, sons and daughters, children with them. So these children, although they were king's daughter and sons, but they basically, there was nobody to take care of them. And they became very spoiled. They were becoming a nuisance to the public. So when the king came to know, and he has an advisor who was very wise, and he asked this advisor what to do. So this advisor said, "Sir, you have a solution right in front of your eyes. So what is the solution? So you are such a beloved king, and these children are basically missing love and care. Why don't you place them into your kingdom in the family, in different families? So if you were selected as one of those families to host the king's son or daughter, first you have to do is straighten your habits. You cannot smoke, you cannot drink, you cannot do something, because ultimately that child is king's son. King can behead you. So in the reality, we have in us the biggest king there is on this earth is the divine power. So they are sons and daughters of the divine power, which we call them Ors. So we are basically hosts to develop them into the highest value adding entities. So our training to them is basically to convert them, to let them know who they are and have them focus on adding the highest value and making them a good student who are parked in present. Right?
Well, that is, I love what Kim said, is sometimes you want to kill them. Any parent understands that emotion, and you love them so much. But I think you just touched on it with your story, is that we do think of our kids in some ways as our possessions. They're mine. They I'm responsible for them in a good way. I care about them. I love them so deeply. So I take responsibility and for making them better, but I think of them as mine, as my possession. You've changed again the paradigm with that story. It's like, no, they are my responsibility, but I don't own them. They belong to the king. And so it does change the rules if you can understand that that's the way we need to look at that. Kim, I don't know if that helps at all for you, but it does shift things in terms of, okay, how am I supposed to act in this scenario if they're not really mine, if I'm just responsible for them, but they belong to the king. Not always easy to keep in mind, though. I agree. Anybody else have some thoughts? We'd love to hear from you too.
Do we have time for another question?
Yes, for sure.
All the
We have
time.
all the time in the world.
Okay, and this is something where I'm, authentically seeking some guidance from Ratanjit or with anybody else who can contribute. So the conundrum that I've had is that there have been times in my life where I have been motivated by nothing other than egoistic self-glorification and narcissistic self-aggrandizement. But even at those times, my mind has been perfectly capable of rationalizing my motivation and convincing me that I am doing something in the best interest of the whole. And other than developing a critical ability to question my own motives and to question the sanctity of my own motives and to invite feedback from others that help me see beyond this elaborately constructed edifice of rationalizations that left me always feeling holier than thou, I do not know how one could proceed, because at those times I genuinely thought I was motivated by the potential for an exalted spiritual contribution. It's only years later I look back and I say, oh my God, that was not what was driving me then. So the ability of the human mind to rationalize all our motives and to paint ourselves in a positive light concerns me. And in terms of if Ratanjit has any other perspective on how at such times we could wake ourselves up from the trance of, thinking of ourselves as making the highest possible contribution. Thank you.
Let's have our participants make some comments. Let's see whether their feedback can
I think we can all relate to that, Professor. Before we get the input, I think we can all connect to that. That's not unique to you. It may be unique to you to realize this is going on, and so eloquently commented on and displayed to all of us. Incredible words that you just used to really describe it. But I think we all experience that. So has anybody else found a way to overcome that rationalization that we do? That could mean
Sudarshan,
nobody has.
Sudarshan, you have any comment?
Okay, Ratanjit, I think it's up to you. You've got to give us the answer in this one because nobody else is
I do have a comment.
volunteering.
I think that
Oh,
part
good.
of my pain as a parent is that I have it that my children's behavior is a reflection of me. And when they make mistakes, that I somehow did something wrong. So my whole perspective, maybe it isn't adding the highest value, but having them make me look good. Maybe if I got clear about that, then it wouldn't hurt so much when they make mistakes.
Yeah, you see, what happens is we have formed a character at the age 6, and that is parked in insecurity, fear, greed, and ego. So now when we see these things as it was ego, and basically that is also parked in ego. So when we consider ourselves, I caught myself egoic, I feel proud, I feel better. That is also part in ego. So until this habit of being parked in ego and insecurity and greed, fear is changed, and we acquire a habit of only remaining in the present. In the present moment, there is no ego. There is no jealousy. There is no fear in the present moment. So if we understand the present moment, basically it is only and focus our brain to constantly only think of adding the value, making a difference, and not taking a credit. Once you are in the present, you will forget yesterday you added the highest value. So the pride is not available to you because your memory does not compute that, because you are in the present moment. Present moment, old memory are not present. Present moment is only there to add the highest value. It is very difficult to comprehend that because we are so used to we never live in the present moment. We always live in the past or in the future.
But Ratanjit, I think what Professor is also saying is that even in that moment, our powerful brain is immediately rationalizing why we're doing this. We're immediately justifying why we're doing something, even if in our conscience and our gut we know that this may not be for the right reasons. Our brain is saying, yes, it is. Yes, it is for the right reason, because you're helping these people with this, and this is part of your purpose, and this is, your skill set can do these things right now, so you should be doing them.
And that's
and
why
you're living in the moment.
That's
Am I
why
right?
you have to make your best better. Because when you were thinking of you are added the highest value, and then suddenly you realize that was really not the highest value, because the realization would happen only when you are part in the mode of making your best better. So
Is that because of the humility? Is that because you become humbled, knowing that you haven't really done your best yet?
You're not.
Is that
humble is also ego. You don't become humble, or you basically absence of ego. Your focus is constant. You are never satisfied with your last effort because you are constantly making it better. So the pride comes when the last moment you think, oh, wow, what I have achieved. Pride is not there when you see that I can improve it. It was not the best. Pride disappears. Okay. So you staying, this is a very complicated thing, and it by just saying I'm doing my best, I'm improving, I'm adding the highest value. No, you're not. So, because you are constantly improving what you have done before what you have done is becomes mediocre automatically. So it doesn't nurture your pride. It doesn't nurture your ego. Did I make
Anybody else? Yeah, it makes sense. I don't know if Professor, if that answers your question.
Oh, I'm very grateful for the perspective. I think it certainly deepens it. I loved how Ratanjit talked about when we are anchored in the current, in the present fully, the ego disappears, and it's just sharpening our own sense of vigilance to be able to catch ourselves at those moments. I think it was. Yeah, thank you so much, Ratanjit, for your answer.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else would like to share anything with us here today? Your thoughts on today's show? Any questions you have because of it?
We have confused everyone.
Maybe we did.
You helped me, though. I said this earlier, but I have to say it again emphatically that I found the discussion extremely enriching. I thought it was beautiful. I'm so grateful that I was here today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm grateful for you. Your presence helped us.
So,
well,
all right.
I just want to say thanks also. Just, it's hour-long show just goes by so quick, and you guys throw so many things out there that really opens up my mind on things that I hadn't thought about. I'm too basic. Show you how basic I am. When Ray, you opened the show with the story about the glass is half full or half empty, and us engineers say the glass is twice as big as it needs to be. That's our only answer to that. But anyway, I love the show, and I love opening it up, and we'll just keep listening to you guys. It's great.
I also want to thank you. The genie story, for some reason, hit home the themes that the show talks about in a much deeper way. So that's a story I want to share with others, because I think it really illustrates the focus and the greater purpose that we're all working towards. So thank you so much for the whole show. It was amazing. Thank you.
Great to have you, Liz. Thank you. Dr. Jack G?
Yeah, everything was fine. Thanks a lot. Living in present is most important. And that is what we always forget. And 1 second next is future, and 1 second back is past. So what can we do within that one small, even a miniature of a second? So that is very critical. And that is the present becomes the past and the immediate. We understand that, I think. That is very good. We have to think every second, every moment. Live in every moment, I should rather say. We already have, there is no tomorrow. We already had a program on that. Tomorrow means next second. We don't have any next second.
Very nice.
Whatever we can do, the best we can do right now.
Thank you, Dr. Jack G. Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
All of your thoughts have been excellent. We appreciate your chat thoughts too. For those of you who are not real familiar with Zoom, you've got a chat button there on the bottom. So for people that are sharing those ideas, you should have a little red dot kind of right in the middle of your screen. You can click on that and you can chat, interact with people and see what they're saying, and you can comment. That's always open all through the shows. You can chat during the program with everybody or on a one-to-one basis if you choose. Okay, great conversation afterwards. Thank you. Wonderful show today. Brother, I feel so much better than I did an hour and 18 minutes ago. So thank you for picking up my spirits. And we got some ideas here for next week's show too. So we'll have to put those figure those out in our brain, and we'll come back with another interesting show next week. We hope it'll be another show that will add value to your life. Any last thoughts from anyone?
None for me. Thank you very much. See you guys in about a week.
Perfect. Yeah, you're all invited. Bring a friend next week.
Thank you.
Sandeep?
Thank you. I said the hour went by so quickly, and so did this discussion.
Thank you for being part of it.
Thank you.
We appreciate all of you wonderful people. Thank you for sharing your love with us here on this program in your time.
Thanks
Ratanjit,
everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
the best, Ratanjit. Thank you. We'll talk to you this week.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.